Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Larry Silvey, publisher of custom content for Motor Age. Welcome to another Motor Age Hangout called Using ASE Certification as an ROI Tool. It is my pleasure today to interview Tony Molla, Vice President of the National Institute for Automotive Service Excellence, better known as ASE. I've known Tony for a long time. In fact, we measured in decades rather than years. Interestingly, we even held the same job at one point. We both have served as the editorial director for Motor Age and ABRN. His 30-plus years in the aftermarket are steeped with other meaningful experiences, which I'm going to ask Tony to comment on. Tony, welcome, and there's your introduction. Although it's a little bit light, I'll let you jump in and fill that out. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you wound up at ASE.
Well, thanks, Larry. That was a great introduction. I really appreciate it. My automotive career, goes back to when I was about 15 years old and lied about my age. I started working sweeping floors at a Sinclair gas station, which many did back then. Interestingly enough, I actually went to, when I went to college, I grew up working on cars, everybody did in that period of time. And when I was in college at Temple University studying journalism, I was working part-time at a Buick dealership working on used cars. I quickly found out when I got out of school that I was making more money doing that. So for 10 years, I worked as an automotive technician. And among that time, I spent a couple of years as a service manager working for a Fiat dealership. So I was a Fiat service manager named Tony, so I definitely paid my dues. But it was interesting when Fiat put out of the country for the first time. From there, I went on to Chilton Book Company. And that's how I became involved. I was finally able to marry that writing passion that I have with the technical skills that I had developed. And I wrote the first electronic engine controls manual that was ever published in the automotive aftermarket. And that got me the job on Motor Age magazine. And the rest you basically covered. I spent about 14 years on Motor Age before I joined ASE. I was invited to join the organization. Ron Weiner, the previous CEO of ASE, was looking for someone to handle the communications for the organization. And he had approached me and asked if I'd like to join the organization. I had always been a big ASE supporter and believed strongly in the mission of the organization. So about 15 years ago now, I accepted Ron's offer and moved down to Virginia, and I have been here ever since.
That's a great background. I guess it would be just kind of a cheap shot to say, fix it again, Tony, right?
Right. They've gotten a lot better. The Fiats back in the 70s and 80s were very different vehicles from what they're selling today. They have definitely come a long way in quality. But it was an interesting way to get into the industry. Actually, I've managed to experience virtually every level of the automotive service industry, from technician to store manager. I ran a parts store for a while, to the service manager, to what I'm doing now. So it's been an interesting ride. Very good industry to work in, and it's been good for me and my family.
Well, what a great background you have. Well, I guess to set up the appropriate backdrop for our discussion, can you give our viewers a little brief history of ASE, its main purposes, and the certifications it offers?
Sure. ASE began actually back in 1972 as a reaction to what at the time was perceived as fraud in the automotive service industry. The National Associations of Attorneys General did a study, and they found out that it wasn't so much fraud as it was technician incompetence. At the time, there was a great deal of talk about licensing as being a possible solution, but the industry got together and decided that, actually what we needed was a way to evaluate a technician's learning or knowledge level, if you will, to make sure that they are keeping up with changing technology. During this period, things like disc brakes and electronic ignitions and the first emission control systems were coming on board, and the technicians really weren't keeping up with the technological changes, which was leading to a great deal of trouble. The founding fathers of ASE were the National Automobile Dealers Association, the Motor Equipment, or the MVMA, Motor Vehicle Manufacturers Association, and they put up the seed money to form the organization. It again launched its first test in 1972. I believe there was only 4 tests when it first started. Today, 42 years later, 43 years later, we have just under 50 tests, and we cover virtually every area of automotive service in the light, medium, and collision repair categories, along with certifications for soft skills, as we call it, such as parts specialists, service consultants, and automotive estimators. ASE is probably the most recognized symbol within the automotive industry, both to the professionals that hold the certification and to the consumers, believe it or not. Surprising number of them do recognize that logo and what it means. Our research tells us. And again, it's designed to give both employers and the individuals they're going to employ a good way to demonstrate and to measure what level of knowledge they've attained, what they've achieved, to give everybody a better idea of what their capabilities are. Again, not only for the employers but also for consumers as well.
Okay, I was going to ask you about how widely accepted it is, ASE certification that is, and I think you probably answered that, but more importantly, just how much of a difference does it make to a motorist when he or she is searching for a repair shop?
It's funny. We actually did some research recently with Frost and Sullivan to just ask that question, and we were somewhat surprised by the results. It's very, very generational. The younger folks in the millennials and the Generation X and Y really aren't that into cars as those of us who are in the baby boomer generation were. So they don't really know much about the automotive industry at all, ASE included. But among the baby boomers, the bulk of the population right now that is in the automotive service arena, ASE is very well known. Again, more so than we thought. And the research that we've done with Frost and Sullivan not only indicates that they do recognize it as a symbol of competence and quality, but it also, they tell us, does influence their purchase decisions for a significant portion of them. I believe it was about 27%. So the logo and the program does what it was intended to do, and that is provide some sort of symbol, some sort of recognizable seal or brand, if you will, that a consumer who doesn't know anything about vehicles can turn to ensure that the individuals who are working on their vehicles are in fact qualified to do so. And in fact, if you look at, if you Google find a good repair shop, in many of the hits that you get, including from some of the bigger consumer magazines such as Consumer Reports, within the first couple of paragraphs you're going to see a recommendation to look for ASE certified technicians as one of the hallmarks of top performance within the industry. And again, our research with consumers certainly would bear that out.
Well, as hard as you have worked at it, I'm happy to hear that the research backs it up, that it has real, deep perceived value. Do you think that motorists do you think they have to pay more if they patronize a shop that employs certified techs, or if a shop is sanctioned as a Blue Seal shop? You might want to just tell us a little bit about the Blue Seal shop too.
Right. Well, when motorists come to the ASE website looking for a repair shop, the only repair shops we recommend are those that are qualified for our Blue Seal program. The Blue Seal program was designed to recognize those repair facilities that have at least 75% or more of their technicians ASE certified. We do this for a couple of reasons. One is to make sure that the consumer has a very high possibility of getting an ASE certified technician to work on their vehicle, as opposed to having just one person and hanging a sign outside. But also, we audit the shops within the Blue Seal program every year to make sure that they continue to employ a high number of ASE certified professionals, and that those professionals keep their credentials current to make sure they're keeping up with, again, with the changing technology. As you know, ASE requires a recertification every 5 years. So these shops, again, are the only ones that we do recommend to consumers. The question about whether or not they expect to pay more, actually, it's an interesting question. The independent aftermarket has always been perceived as a better value, a lower cost than the dealership alternative, if you will. Whether or not that's true is often a question for debate, because a lot of times when you do a survey in an area, when you start looking at prices, you'll find that it's not that big of a difference. But for the most part, there is a significantly perceived better value for consumers to have their service done at an independent facility. When they get to that independent facility, again, one of the recommendations we always make is to verify that you're dealing with a business that again, is in the community. They've been around for a while. They take care of their customers, and there are little things you can look for to identify these types of businesses and places where consumers are going to want to feel that their service dollars are being well spent. Of course, one of the things they look for, again, is ASE certification, but there are other things that we recommend as well. Membership in the Better Business Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, pictures on the wall for support of local neighborhood events like Little League teams, things like that, that show that the business is itself an established member of the community. But more importantly, the businesses themselves have found, the Blue Seal shops seem to do a better job than any others, as you might expect, in using the certification and many of these other relationships they have with the community as part of their marketing message to give consumers a better idea of the quality and of the competency that they bring to the party when it comes to having their vehicle serviced. Many times the independents are forced to contend with the fact that they're dealing with a very, very wide range of vehicles. These days, having the right equipment and the information necessary to service a wide range of vehicles can be a fairly expensive proposition, whereas, say, a dealership might only be dealing with one or two models, forgetting their used cars for a minute. The independent repair shop typically deals with a wide variety of models every day. Some shops do choose to specialize, but for the most part, they service pretty much anything that comes through the door, at least as it relates to maintenance. Again, if a consumer is going to trust you with their vehicle, they want some assurance that again, that trust is being well placed. And the ASE certification is just one of those things that can help you establish that level of trust. And again, give consumers that feeling that, again, they're dealing with a business that is competent, that is qualified, and that is quality. And I think those are three things that all consumers are looking for.
Okay, now the dealerships, of course, they can also have ASE certified techs. So is there a way that to draw a sharper distinction between, independent shop owners and dealer competitors?
Well, frankly, the automotive manufacturers, for the most part, have incorporated ASE certification into their training and certification programs in a big way, and have for years. In fact, when ASE got started, it was really the vehicle manufacturers that were one of the biggest pushes behind it. They recognize the value of the credential as it relates to things like career development. They make it part of their own certification program. For example, one major Asian manufacturer requires you to be an ASE master technician just to qualify for their master training program. So again, ASE certification is in and of itself an integral part of many of the manufacturers' programs themselves, especially as it relates to their certified automotive service. As far as distinctions go, again, it's been a perception for many years, and the last research I saw, this hasn't changed all that much, that the independents have an advantage of being, oh, I don't know, call it friendlier. Consumers tend to look at dealership operations as more of a cold and personal big box type of thing. Now, to be sure, some consumers want that. Some of the high-end European vehicle owners, for example, tend to favor the dealerships because that's just their personal preference. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, if you're competing for the business in the general populace, you really want to have more of I think, of a community feel, of a community involvement. Generally, the independent service community is better. They get higher marks for convenience. They get very high marks for quality. They also get extremely high marks for being engaged with their customers. Independent service dealers tend to do a better job of communicating. They tend to do a better job of making that connection, developing a relationship with their customers. And like anything else in life, it really is all about the relationships. So if you want to differentiate yourself from a car dealer and you're in the independent service community, I would say it's not rocket science. Form a closer relationship with your customers. Reach out to them, get engaged in your community, become more a part of their lives. And I think that will naturally help attract business and, again, give you an advantage over the dealership, whether or not your prices are that much lower. It really won't make that much of a difference as long as the consumers feel that the service dollars they're investing are being well spent.
All right, I think that you've kind of touched on some of this, but let's dig a little bit deeper, turn our attention over to technicians and shop owners per se. Just what is the return on investments, if you will, for both those groups?
Well, when it comes to ASE certification, we've actually done several studies, beginning with our fleet customers and then with some of our general service customers, to look at some key performance indicators. Specifically, we took a look at productivity, first fix accuracy, and things like retention, longevity on the job, and even things like performance reviews. And we found a direct correlation between the number of ASE certifications and KPI improvements in the key areas of performance, earnings, and first fix accuracy, along with things like, again, longevity. They tend to stay around, tenure on the job, if you will, if they're certified. So there are some significant bottom line benefits for the shop owners who employ ASE certified technicians. Again, simply because if you compare the numbers, come out with higher productivity. But there's more to it than that. I think that for the individual, when we do surveys and we ask our technicians, why do you get certified? Why do you do that? The number one answer that comes back to us is pride. They do it for themselves. They do it to demonstrate the fact that they know what they know, if you will. And we think that's a very valid, certainly a very valid reason to hold the professional credentials. But again, beyond the independent third-party measurement that verifies that you have the skills and you have the knowledge that you claim to have, because without an independent verification, it's basically just an opinion. It can provide many advantages. ASE certified technicians tend to earn more, whether that's because they're more productive, as we mentioned earlier, or because most businesses will actually pay more money, either a salary differential, which is very common among some of the fleet customers, or so much more, whether it's a bonus situation or whatever, they reward the fact that they have achieved ASE certification. So again, there's a very real bottom line impact on a technician's compensation as well for being certified. Beyond those obvious and I'll admit somewhat mercenary examples, being ASE certified opens up a world of opportunity for you that you may not really appreciate. If you look around at some of the job postings on either some of the job boards or even if you're still reading the newspaper, some of the local newspapers, they invariably mention ASE certification either required or preferred. And again, some of that research that we did with our shop owner customers, we asked them if all this stuff sounded right to them, in just an opinion survey. And they said, yeah, we do notice that they're more productive. They tend to stay around longer. And quite honestly, when we asked them, do you look for ASE certification when you're making hiring decisions? Virtually 100% of them said, yeah, I would favor someone with a professional credential over someone without one, which of course would seem, like common sense. But beyond the opportunities and the doors that can open for you by having a professional credential, there are ancillary things like a lot of the technician competitions that I judge in the industry. ASE certification is one of the prerequisites for competing. ASE itself has a program where last year we honored 40 technicians at our fall banquet. A bunch of our industry partners get together to provide the type of recognition that many of these technicians would never have known had it not been for the fact that they achieved ASE certification. Again, some of the bigger competitions within the industry and some of the bigger reward programs, if you will, ASE certification is a part of it. If you're a shop that wants to get involved in some of the extended warranties, which by the way are becoming more popular as our vehicle population ages, many of the extended warranty companies tell their consumers you can have your car fixed anywhere as long as it's done by an ASE certified technician. So again, beyond the simple professional credentials, and there's more examples of course, beyond the simple professional credentials, having the certification, having the credentials that prove that you know what you know, can have benefits for not both personally, professionally, and frankly for employers when it comes to things like promoting their businesses, instilling consumer trust, demonstrating confidence. The list goes on and on.
Well, it's actually hard to fathom that some people would not be ASE certified, but I guess that happens. And I know you're after everybody. So, and with all that you've already done, you're well on your way to doing that, I'm sure. If we could go on to, I know you introduced the ASE Maintenance and Light Repair Certification. I believe it's called G1. If you could explain that just a little bit and fit that into the ROI scenario, if you would.
Sure. This is a bit more complicated. The industry itself is changing. If you take a look at the mix of service work being done, and this is about 5 years ago, we started doing this, maybe even longer, we found that basically 70% of the work being done in shops across the country right now is essentially maintenance-based. And the mix of talent, the mix of skills that a shop needs is changing along with the mix of work that's coming through the door, if you will. The most significant change is at the entry-level position. The industry came to ASE about 8 years ago and said, we need a credential that will clearly show us an entry-level person has the basic skills necessary for him or her to perform on the job at that particular level. We didn't have a credential for that. The ASE A series and all the other certifications were really meant for journeymen. and we had a hole, if you will, in our credentialing process between those that graduated from a career and technology education program and those who were, again, had at least 2 years experience or more on the job, which is where the regular certification kicked in. What we're seeing is a shift in skill sets within the shops where as we move forward, we're going to be seeing perhaps instead of a shop full of master technicians, you're probably going to see 1 or 2 master technicians and then a number of other technicians at lower levels working underneath them so that you can better fit the work that's coming through the door. It's interesting because we've actually made changes at both ends of the spectrum, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the G1 certification was designed specifically for those individuals who, whether they came out of a career and technology education program or learned their automotive maintenance skills, at the knee of the master, if you will, like some of us did on the way up. There's an instrument there to measure that level of knowledge. In fact, we've actually taken it back one step further. Many states now require that the students, when they graduate from a career technology education program, we call them CTE, have some sort of professional credential that's recognized by the industry. And ASE got together with Skills USA, NATEF, AES, and ATMC and created the student certification credential to fulfill this need. So when an individual comes out of a career and technology education program, they will actually have been assessed at that very basic level while they were a student, and that sets them up to take the G1 test, if you will, the maintenance and light repair test, which will kind of begin their stair-step process as they move up the chain in certifications. From the G1, again, it's a slightly different type of certification. ASEs are normally very, very narrow and very, very deep. The G1 certification is more broad and shallow, but it's every bit an ASE certification. It's just as challenging for that level of individual as a regular ASE certification would be for a higher level individual. And again, it's not meant to replace the regular ASE certification. It's more to be a stair step in the process of developing your skill set. If I may, on the other end of the spectrum, although you didn't ask about this, I said we build up both sides. We now require 3 years worth of experience for an individual to qualify for the L series, our most advanced tests. And we have 3 of those tests. 2 now are active. The L1, which is a gasoline engine test, very common among smog technicians and those involved in emissions repair work. The L2 is a diesel engine test, same thing for medium and heavy vehicles. And now light vehicles, which we have a diesel test for that as well. And then a new hybrid, light vehicle, hybrid electric vehicle certification will be launched in January of 2015. It's in development now. That will complete the process and give us a high-end test for those engaged in hybrid service. But again, all along the way, it's very much a stair-step process, which is beginning to mirror how the NATEF accreditation process at the career and technology schools is preparing their students for jobs within the industry. So again, you can see we've created a process through something we call the ASE Industry Education Foundation, where we've established this stair step within the educational community, which mirrors the skill sets required in the actual real world, so that we're sure that the students coming out of these programs will have the types of skills they need in order to, just be integrated into the shop environment almost immediately. Admittedly, at the level they're trained to do, they're not going to come out of a school with a master's ticket, but they'll certainly be well on their way to achieving that in their career.
Well, I know you just started this not too long ago. Have you seen an effect already, or what's the feedback been?
On the G1, you're asking?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So far, the reaction has been very positive. In fact, we've had many of our service dealers come to us and say, I want my service consultant to take that G1 test, or I want some have even recommended some of their parts people take the G1 test to have a better understanding of what their service customers are doing. So there's that ancillary effect. Many of the instructors tell us that it's a great way to start when their students come out of the program, because again, it only requires 1 year worth of experience, half of which can be met by graduating from a career and technology education program. But again, it's a much more focused measure of knowledge at that particular level, where again 70% of the work is being done. So far the reaction has been very positive. It's been a little slow on the uptake because A lot of the of our technicians have been going with the traditional ASE program, but we've actually been surprised at the number of master technicians who have taken it just to have it. And the feedback we've gotten from the test is, you know, it was more challenging than they expected it to be. So we know for a fact that it works, again, at the level it's designed to do. And many who take it are somewhat surprised at the rigor with which it was actually put together. So we're very pleased with the results so far, and we hope that it will be, again, an integral part of that stair-step process for the new technicians now coming through the CTE programs. And as we you know, work with them through their entire career, we hope that it'll be a great lead-in for the rest of the certification program.
Well, congratulations on that. I think it's a major move on your part. So you're welcome. Most shops that employ ASE certified techs advertise the fact that they have indoor and outdoor signage, you know. So as we talk about marketing, what other proactive things can shop owners do to take advantage of certification? For instance, would you recommend that they post all of the tech certificates in the waiting area? That or anything else?
Oh, absolutely. Many of the shops do that already. They're very proud of the fact that, and they post the certifications of all their technicians. But there's been a lot of conversation over the years about, you know, who should be promoting ASE. We're a much smaller organization than most people realize. We have less than 50 employees at our headquarters here in Leesburg, Virginia, and we're a nonprofit. We simply don't have the budget to do a national, you know, advertising campaign, much as we'd like to be able to do that. What we do have going for us, and if you watch any television, you'll see that patch appear quite a bit in many of our partners' advertisements. Some of the major brands out there advertise the fact that they have ASE certified technicians. And they're doing this for a reason in their national advertising. Because again, from our Frost and Sullivan studies, we recognize the fact that consumers do understand and are looking for some assurance of quality when it comes to automotive service. Some of the recent research I've seen compares having your car serviced with going to the dentist. I hate that analogy, but again, it's a fair way to understand that it's an unplanned expense for most people. Most people don't plan to have their cars fixed, and when they break down, it's usually expensive. So it's a fairly aggravating experience. This is where we're back to that relationship thing. Having a way to establish a relationship with your customers can help overcome some of these trepidations, if you will, that people feel about getting their car serviced. And marketing is the way to do that. The smart businesses, again, at the national level, are leveraging the fact that consumers associate the ASE brand with competency, with quality, and with assurance, you know, of getting a good repair the first time. So they understand the value of that and attracting customers, and they leverage that. At the national level, that's fine in national advertising, but really all marketing is local, like all politics is local. I think that it's most important for shops to understand that consumers do respond to symbols of quality, if you will. And incorporating the fact that you employ ASE certified professionals in your marketing should be as natural an inclusion as letting them know that you offer service between, you know, 7 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock at night, or whatever your hours are, what types of service you offer, you know, what specials you might have going on. It's all part of the process of informing your customers of the quality and value that you provide for something that is a very important and very integral part of their lives. The personal vehicle, let's face it, is our mass transportation system in the United States. For the most part, most of us don't live in cities. Those that do, very few of them have effective mass transit systems. But for the most part, individuals rely on their personal transportation to get to work, to get to school, to do all the things that we do in living our lives. And keeping that transportation running reliably is an important consideration for them. The shop owner's job is to make the process of keeping that car reliable and, you know, and dependable, and on the cold winter's day when you stick the key in the ignition and twist the key, it fires up, as easy and as pleasant as possible. And again, in their marketing process, it's as important to understand and to explain the qualifications of the people they have working on the vehicle as it is the capabilities of the shop in performing whatever kinds of service that they're offering. It's all part and parcel of the same story.
Very good. Key to any certification is ongoing training, in my mind, Tony. These days, it looks like online training is being well received due to a couple main things, I think, affordability and convenience. One program that looks like it's working well is one that is called MotoSkill. Are you familiar with that? And if so, can you comment on it and its approach and its effectiveness?
Sure. I can't comment on its effectiveness. I'm not that familiar with it, but I have to tell you, I'm very familiar with motorskills. And in many ways, it is an example of the type of relationships that suppliers are going to have with their shop customers going forward. You know, shops are constantly faced with a breathtaking advance in technology when it comes to the automotive industry. Think about it. A 5-year-old car is very different from a new car, and a new car 5 years from now is going to be very different from what we're working on in our shop. The average age of a vehicle is over 11 years. So there's lots of work out there to be done, and shops are constantly in need of ongoing training to keep their technicians on the cutting edge of technology. They need help. We had talked about marketing earlier. Many shop owners are very good technicians, but not so great marketers. So they need to have this kind of support and these kinds of mechanisms in their business from their business partners to help them succeed. And it's critical to the supplier side of the industry to make sure that they do everything they can to help those shops succeed. Because again, when the shop succeeds, the suppliers succeed. The MotorSkills program that I've seen provides the type of myriad of advantages, from marketing to the technical training. I believe they even have some ASE test prep to help prepare them for the ASE certification tests. And again, can provide a lot of business services that will help a shop be more productive, increase those KPIs, and take advantage of things like modern technology to deliver stuff like service information that they need, the training that they need. You know, not everybody reacts well to the online training or the hands-on training. We all learn very differently. But we have noticed in the training arena, again, one of ASE's, part of the ASE Training Alliance is the Automotive Training Managers Council. And in their meetings, we've seen a large move towards what they call distance learning or online delivery of training. We're moving into an arena, I personally think, where we're going to be looking more at almost on-demand training, where you are going to be educated at the point of repair. When you pull up the service information, that, you know, it's going to have a lot more depth, if you will, than it ever did before. And it'll almost be, again, on-demand training as you're actually doing the job. But when it comes to, there's just so much information to keep up with these days, and we all have so little time to do it. Having some sort of online capability to keep the update information coming is going to be critical to success. And MotorSkills is a great way to provide that, along with some of the other services that I said. And in many ways, I feel, again, it's very, very typical of what we're going to be seeing from most of the suppliers. And these types of systems actually have been growing for some time among what we used to call the program groups, you know, the mass merchandisers and the large organizations that have affiliated shops in their programs, things like, you know, Napa Auto Care and CarQuest TechNet, those sorts of things, where they do provide this type of support. And again, I think it's going to be more important going forward. So as far as I'm concerned, this is something you're going to be seeing more of. And again, I don't think it's a stretch to say it's on the cutting edge of where we're going when it comes to partnering and what types of business development services are going to be provided to the shops from their industry partners.
Okay, it sounds like being comprehensive is very important, and it sounds like that program is. Well, we're winding down here a little bit. I got a couple more questions for you. What other opportunities and challenges do you see in the industry that will affect the ROI of shops, and what can shops do to take advantage of the opportunities and respond to the challenges?
Well, again, I think the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges facing shops moving forward is, quite frankly, having the talent we need. The average age of technicians, of ASE certified technicians, is about 42. Last time I checked the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average age of most technicians working was somewhere between 43 and 44. The baby boomers started retiring at the rate of 10,000 a day, I believe, 2 years ago. And baby boomers make up a disproportionate amount of the working technicians we have in the industry today. I remember reading a scary statistic that about 50% of all of the individuals working as technicians in the industry are going to be retiring in the next 7 to 12 years, and I read that about 3 years ago. So we're facing some significant challenges when it comes to simply having enough talent in the shops to cope with what's a growing vehicle fleet. And if you take into consideration the aging vehicles, there's quite a bit of work out there to be done. This translates to me into tremendous opportunity. As our society ages, we tend to become more do-it-for-me than do-it-yourself customers. I think that there's a great opportunity for shops to, again, establish relationships with their consumers and provide almost that turnkey, you don't have to think about it kind of relationship where they're going to have consumers depending on them, not only for their automotive service, but for the advice they need to keep their vehicles going. So I think one of the other challenges beyond personnel for a shop is to find new ways to communicate, find new ways to reach out to their customers. We're all looking at social media, that sort of thing, but again, just finding a way to strengthen and develop those relationships, I think, is going to be one of the biggest challenges moving forward. It's not simply a matter of slapping the groceries on the counter and ringing it up anymore. You really have to be more for your customers, just as some of the things we've described for suppliers need to be more to the shops they provide. As far as opportunities goes, and the sky's the limit. We're seeing a growth in things like diesel engines in this country. I think there's going to be more. We're going to see more diesels in the fleet. That's a service opportunity. Hybrids have been around for a while. We're all moving towards some form of either hyper efficient. I think gasoline is going to be with us for the rest of our natural lives, quite honestly, in some fashion. But the engines that use it are going to become much more sophisticated. We're looking at smaller engines with higher output. Things like turbochargers are being introduced. Electronic engine controls, more sophisticated electronics all the way around. Virtually every system on the vehicle now is electronic. These things are wonderful, marvels of technology. They have very few moving parts. They tend to be very durable. But when they fail, it takes an individual with a brain to find out where the problem is and fix it. And none of that is ever going to change. I think one of the great opportunities our industry offers young people looking for a stable career is the stability that we provide. If you have technical skills and the right skill set and your certifications, etc., you can probably go anywhere literally in the world, but certainly within the United States, and probably find employment. The more highly trained you are, the more scarce the technicians become. The way it's always worked in the past is supply and demand. That can only have an upward pressure, I think, on compensation, salaries, and benefit packages. So for me, again, the opportunities I think are there, both for the individuals who choose a career in the automotive service industry and for those who offer services to the general public. The challenge is going to be to make sure that you have the right equipment, make sure you have the right people, make sure you have the correct information that you need. And from there, I think another big consideration is going to be moving forward. How much of this do I really want to do? Will we see shops, for example, maybe specializing in a couple of different brands because of the cost of the service equipment, that sort of thing? So there may be new opportunities down the road that we hadn't considered, where it may be in, I don't know, 10 or 20 years the norm, where you would, very much like you would go to a different dealership these days, whether you have a Chevy or a Ford or whatever, you may find that if you're going to be doing the same type of process within an independent service community, where some shops will specialize in specific models simply to provide that same high quality level of service and to be able to afford the equipment they need to do that. So these are interesting times in the industry, very challenging times. We have some significant challenges in front of us. I think that we have a great infrastructure in the Industry Education Alliance that will help us provide the pipeline of qualified people that we need. But again, going forward, I think it's probably the most exciting time in my career to be in the industry. I think, again, the opportunities are legion. The hard part is figuring out how to grasp those and take the most advantage of them.
Okay, certainly agree with all that, and I think, like you, at the top of my list is that technician shortage, which actually finally has arrived. We've talked about it for a long time, but now it's actually here. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to tell our viewers the best way to get more information about ASE certification and upcoming test dates. Tony, can you fill us in just a little bit on that?
Certainly, thank you. I wouldn't let you get away without it. Absolutely. ASE, most people know this already. Back in 2012, ASE actually changed its whole program. We are now testing all year long in a new computer-based format. There's lots of information. Anything they want to know about ASE can be found on the ASE website at ase.com. Very simple. Information on the tests that we offer, the schedule of testing throughout the year, how to register. There's even information there, all of this is free, tutorials to show them how the new testing system works. We have webinars that we've done to help them prepare for the tests. There's some additional interesting information there for consumers, for example. If you're a shop owner and you have a newsletter and you are looking for content or to send off to your consumers about how to take care of their vehicles, there's a wealth of information available for free on the ASE website. But it all kind of starts and stops at ase.com. So when in doubt, go there, look around. If you don't find it, give us a call. We'll be happy to help any way we can.
Well, Tony, as usual, I've enjoyed talking to you today. I think you've given our viewers a lot to think about to help them in their businesses, some real practical information. Again, thank you for your time.
And I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks again.
Also, I would like to thank all of our viewers as well for joining us today. And please watch more Motor Age Hangouts in the future. Until then, this is Larry Silvey for Motor Age.